What's good, guys? Fantasy Joe back here with some more fantasy football content. Today, I'm talking my running back league winners. If you guys are new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I post a ton of quality content. Wide receiver league winners are already out. More videos coming your guys' way, especially in season. Tons of good in-season stuff. Buy lows, sell highs. You guys do that at the right time. It can help you win your league. Start sits are a huge consideration once you get going in the season. A lot of that stuff matters in a big way when it comes to winning your league. There's a whole lot more than the draft. So if you want to win your fantasy football championships, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section down below. Really helps out the algorithm, and I respond to all of those. So if you guys need any fantasy football help, just let me know. All right, let's talk Amir Gibbs, my first running back league winner, going at the end of round 4, beginning of round 3. I think is a great value where he's currently going in drafts. Obviously, let's just get kicked off here. The Detroit Lions took him at the 12th overall draft pick in the first round. That means he's going to receive a ton of work this first year. If you saw the Detroit Lions draft room when they drafted him too, they were absolutely over the moon that they got him, and which is a lot considering obviously he's a running back, and for all intents and purposes, they really had nothing to fear about him being drafted, but great excitement about getting him on their roster, and I think that is going to produce for fantasy football this upcoming season. Let's talk about Amir Gibbs, how explosive an athlete he is. So he is at 5'9", 199, under 200 pounds, but we see this 4.36 40-yard dash, 99th percentile. He's breaking the meters that they have set up. And like I said, the pass catching is what gets me so excited. This last year, 2 years ago at Georgia Tech, led the entire country in receiving yards for a running back. Last year, 444 receiving yards. Has just thrived in that role. That's where I expect the Detroit Lions to heavily utilize him this upcoming season. Something to consider as well, the Lions' backfield last year had the most fantasy points of any backfield in fantasy, and I expect him to be a featured guy in that offense. Obviously, they do have David Montgomery, and I think he'll be used, but there's a reason they spent a first-round pick on this running back. Another thing to consider, Detroit has an absolutely immaculate, extremely impressive offensive line, top 5, and they're not 5. Great offensive line. And like I said, the draft capital and the importance of receptions in fantasy football is something you have to consider. I think he'll get close to 10 touches a game, 10 carries a game, and then you add all that receiving work on top of that. Like I said, with that offensive line, I expect him to average 5 yards a carry or more. He's super explosive, meaning he doesn't need 20 carries to have that big play that makes your entire week. I think he'll be able to have some of those performances on the ground for you. But here's the thing that really excites me. It's the importance of the receiving game. A target in fantasy football is worth 2.5 times what a carry is worth. If you look into the advanced metrics, I expect Gibbs to get 70-plus targets in that offense. 70 times 2.5, you're looking close to 200, 210 carries just in the passing game as far as volume goes. You're trying to equate that to one number, but that equals well over 300 carries. If you were going to compute that with the amount of carries I project him to get, I think he gets 170, something like that on the ground. I think he could have 60 receptions. They've talked about David Montgomery obviously is there. I do expect him to be the goal line guy, but I think Gibbs will score before they get into the 20s. And I think that Gibbs is due for an impressive season, like I said, because of that passing game work, and I think that they will use both of them on the field at the same time. They've already talked about that. I don't think it's just going to be David Montgomery or Amir Gibbs. I think there's going to be times where David Montgomery's on the field, and they're using Amir Gibbs in that slot. They're spreading him out wide. They're doing creative things to get him the ball in space, jet sweeps, things of that nature. And when you look at that wide receiver core, Jameson Williams suspended. They have Amon-Ra, but they need another option. I believe that's what they think Amir Gibbs. I don't think they would take him so high in the draft if they didn't believe wholeheartedly in his receiving ability. And if you just watch the tape, he looks immaculate as a runner. He uses his vision well. He saves his bursts. He runs. Sometimes it's like he's not even running full speed, and then he's just setting the next guy up so he can hit that gear, get past him, and get to that level. And once he hits that gear, nobody is going to catch him. So I think he's a guy who can have enough explosive plays, get that 170 carries, something like that, catch 60-plus balls. I think 60 is not the floor, but I don't think it's a ceiling either by any means. So Amir Gibbs, I think he's going to be an absolute stud this year and a league winner. Another thing to point out for Amir Gibbs, he also has the #1 running back schedule this season. I think that will be awesome for him for fantasy football. My second league winner is Khalil Herbert. Absolutely love how efficient he is as a runner. Love watching him on tape. You see 5 yards per carry for his entire career, and I do think he will be the featured back for Chicago this upcoming season. Something to point out about him and how good he was this last year. He had 70 fewer rushing yards than David Montgomery, and he had 72 fewer carries. That's something to consider, and that offensive line was not good last year, but he still produced good numbers. He's efficient. I think that offensive line in Chicago will be improved this year. He also has the second easiest schedule for running backs. We saw him make that big screenplay in the preseason. That's not why I'm all over him. It's from watching the tape from previous years. But I think that does provide that he will be the guy to start the season, and I think he's a talented enough player that I don't see him losing that role to Roschon Johnson or Deontay Foreman, even though they may be involved. I think Herbert will be the featured guy, and where he's going currently in 7th, 8th round of drafts, I love taking him in the 7th round. I'd take him in the back end of the 6th, to be honest with you. It's a run-heavy offense. He should get the ball a good amount. And another thing to consider, we're talking about how good he is, how efficient. He was 3rd in the league in yards after contact per carry last year, 3.67 yards after contact. And like I said, with an improved offensive line, he might get more yards before contact. He had 731 rushing yards last year on only 129 carries. What happens to that number? It's 225, 250, and he catches some passes. I think he's an absolute candidate for a league winner, somebody I love taking in drafts where he's going. I think if I wouldn't mind him being my RB2 to start the season. And yeah, I just love Khalil Herbert. Draft him everywhere you can the 7th round this season. The last guy we're going to talk about, he's just an honorable mention, but Kenneth Walker, he's currently going in like the 4th round of drafts right now. And if we look at his numbers, if you look at from week 6 to week 17, once he was a starter, he was the RB8 in all of fantasy football. He's an extremely explosive player, ran a 4.3 at the combine, meaning he doesn't have to have every single run go for something. He can make that entire week on that one play. And they did bring in Zach Charbonnet in the 2nd round, but let me point out a similar situation to Charbonnet coming in. Rashad Penny was a 1st-round draft pick. Chris Carson was a 7th-round draft pick and the incumbent starter. Carson hung on to that starting spot for that entire season and the next year. And like I said, that was with 1st-round capital. Charbonnet is a talented player, no doubt, but he was a 2nd-round pick. I do like the pass catching of Charbonnet. I think he's a good runner. If it was just him, this isn't an anti-Zach Charbonnet take. This is more of a pro Kenneth Walker and the type of player he is take. But yeah, when I think you consider those things, I don't think Kenneth Walker will be super involved in the passing game this year. I think that's where he could lose it. But I do think he will be the back to own in Seattle as long as he doesn't get injured. And obviously any of these guys could get injured. But if he doesn't, I think he could be extremely fruitful for fantasy football, be that solid RB2, maybe even an RB1 by the end of the season. And Zach Charbonnet could get hurt. Everyone's acting like it's just Ken Walker. Any of these guys could get hurt at any different time. So Ken Walker's a guy I love taking in the 4th round of drafts if I need some RBs to boost my roster. If you guys have made it to this point in the video, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section down below. I'll respond as always. This has been Fantasy Joe. Thank you guys so much for watching.